Okay, so as we discussed it, the RUP is also one of the iterative process model that supports the agile framework. So, which is nothing but an RUP is an unified, rational unified process.
Okay.
Yeah, so it will gives a disciplined approach of assigning tasks and responsibilities within a development organization. So its goal is also to ensure the production of high quality software that meets the needs of its end users within a predictable schedule and budget. And rational unified process is an iterative adaptive software process which supports the agile framework, and it is built on blocks or content elements. So what will be the blocks is nothing but whenever we have the block, we will need to answer the questions of who, what, and how. So these are the main blocks of the I mean the rational unified process. So if you look at the points in the rational unified process, so the points that are mentioned, like it is a disciplined approach, so which is nothing but agile or scrum is also a disciplined approach where we are going to assign tasks to the development and the QA team, which is nothing but our scrum team. And there also we are going to ensure the production of high quality software which we are going to meet the requirements of the end users. And Scrum is also an iterative adaptive software framework process. And the only thing here, the new thing you identified is the RUP framework is built on blocks or content elements. So this is the only difference in the when compared with
Okay.
the other process that supports the Agile framework. So whatever the different process or that are there in the Agile, like the extreme programming or ASD or DSDM, whatever it may be, either RUP, rational unified process, all these are convey the same definition, but how it is going to define, like the words they have or the attributes they have used to define that particular process are slightly different. Like in Scrum, we have called as a product backlog, sprint Scrum ceremonies. And in extreme programming, we have we discussed the same, after completing the development, then we have, I think we discussed about the 12 principles of the extreme programming, which are something like a pair programming and the metaphor. So these are the some of the process that's a process of the extreme programming.
Mm.
So now if you look at the uh, in the RUP process, the only difference, the new concept that what we have identified is the RUP framework is built on the blocks or the content elements, which what will be the blocks like who, what, and how. So the who part is encompassed in the block roles, which define certain related responsibilities and competencies. So it's nothing but who are going to um, own this particular task, or who will be taking the responsibilities of completion or to complete the assigned task. And then when we assign a particular, say for example, if I say the BA is the person who is going to be the responsible person to work on the requirements part. So when I say that who in the requirements part, when I mention the block categorized as a who, so it will come under who, come under as a BA as a in the who section. So in coming to the when I say like who will be working on the requirements part, so it will be a BA. When I say so the BA is working on that project. So what is the BA or what the BA is going to work? When I mention like the BA will be working on the requirements part. So what are the different? I mean, what is the process, or what are the requirement elicitation process or requirements gathering techniques that the BA is used? So that will come under the what's block, or we can call it as a what section. And then we have the how. How part is nothing but like how we are going to implement that particular functionality. Say in our perspective, like when we say like the requirements gathering or the business analytics techniques that what we have discussed. So when I say what we are going to do, like I'm saying I'm going to understand the business analysis by implementing or by using the sorry, by using the business analysis techniques. So when I mention like how I'm going to do the business analysis techniques, then I will say like I will be using the Moscow technique. I think I can mention that Moscow is one of the business analysis technique that I'm going to use to understand the client requirements.
Okay.
Is this clear till now?
Yeah.
Okay. So the RUP life cycle phases here we are having inception, elaboration, construction, and transition. So it's nothing but in the SDLC life cycle we are having the design, analysis, design, test, and deliver. So similarly, here we are having the inception, elaboration, construction, and transition. So if you see the process that happens in the each of the phase remains same, but the terminology or the verbiage that has been used in this particular life cycle is different. So inception is one of the phase where we can say it as like analysis or design, or we can say it as a design part. So analysis is a phase where we are going to understand the client requirements, and then elaboration is the phase that where we are going to design the documentation for the requirements, and construction is the phase where we are going to assign those requirement documents or assign those user stories to the respective team who will be working on the functionality part or or how to implement that functionality. And a transition in the sense like how we are going to deliver, we can say it as like when we are going to move into the production, so that will come under as the transition phase.
Okay.
So now we will see like what happens in the inception phase. So if you look at here, inception is the phase where the concept is actually commenced or initiated. So it is nothing but the scope of the project is defined in the inception phase. So the inception phase is explained about the scope of business and the stakeholders and the cost benefit analysis and the feasibility analysis. So it provides a strong foundation because until and unless if we don't have the scope of the project, so we can't move to the next phase. Like we can't work on the requirements part or the development or the testing, whatever may be the phases that are going to come under the SDLC process. So similarly, the most important concept or law phase in the RUP process is the inception phase. So now the second one is the elaboration phase, where we are going to define, validate, and baseline the architecture, and then address the architecture significant risks. And then based on that, we will have a detailed plan for the construction phase, and we will give a demo what is the roadmap that we are going to have for this project. So the same like after completing the scope of the project, so we are going to in the design phase in the SDLC, we have the design phase where we are going to work on the document the requirements in a BRD business requirements document, and sometimes in an FRS, which is the functional requirement specification. So we are elaborating or we are uh, discussing the requirements. And here it is the construction phase where we are going to have the development. So if you see here, it completes the software product for transition to production. So it minimizes the development costs, and then we will achieve the adequate quality. And we will be having usually we will be having different versions when we are going to have a release of the particular sprint. So usually sprint will be we will be defining with the sprint number followed by the if we have any project code, then it will be having a project code, and then the version of the sprint, like it is if it is a first initial version, so we will be calling it as a version v1. So here they will be calling it as a alpha, beta, and other test releases. And in the construction phase itself, where we will be having both the development and testing will be done in the same phase.
Okay.
And in transition phase, which is nothing but whatever we have completed, or we can say like whatever the user stories or the requirements that are developed in which are mentioned in the business requirement document. So those will be moved into the production. I mean, after completing the testing, then we will be moving into the UAT, which is user acceptance testing, where the users are going to test the application. So when we got the sign up from the UAT phase, then we will move that particular items or the requirements that are planned for the particular release into production. So the same process is going to happen in the transition phase as well.
Okay.
And here we have the common thing. It's a generic. We already discussed about the role of a BA in SDLC. So evaluation phase, analysis phase, design phase, and followed by and testing phase. So the only difference, if you observe in the RUP process, that what we have discussed is the phases of the names or the cycle or the whatever the phases that has been defined in the rational unified process, the phases of the verbiage is different, but the process of that particular phase or the functionality that we are going to do in that particular phase remains same here. So you need to remember here that one thing is the RUP is also an iterative development process. And here in the RUP, we will be having four different phases, which is like inception, elaboration, and construction and transition. So
Mm.
inception is the phase where we are going to define the scope of the project, and elaboration is the phase where we are going to discuss on the scope. I mean, scope of the project means we need to understand the requirements of the project. And construction is the phase where we are going to, whatever the requirement documents we have prepared, those will be shared to the development team and the QA team, where the development team will start working on writing the code or to achieve the functionality, and the QA team will work on preparing the test cases on the functionality on the requirement that what we have described in the BRD document.
Okay.
And then transition is nothing but releasing into the moving the code into the production.
Okay.
So this is about RUP process. Think the main questions that you are going to get about is like what is RUP, and then you can get the answer of the RUP. If you say like what is RUP, then you will get the answers from these points. And then the second question you may get is like what are the different phases in the RUP life cycle? So you can say like it has an inception, elaboration, construction, and transition. And the third question is like, what will happen in inception phase? Say, if you mention like say RUP process, rational unified process, we have four different phases. In that phase, elaboration is the phase. So what usually the elaboration phase is going to describe? This is the third question which you are going to get in the RUP.
Okay.
But mostly 90% the interviewers will not ask or will not move to this particular concept because of, as it counts on the experience. If it is, the candidate or the profile is having an experience of less than 5 years or within between the 3 to 5 years, so their focus is to understand the minimal required roles and responsibilities of a BA, and what is SDLC and what are the different methodologies that support the SDLC, and then what is Agile and what are the different process that supports Agile, and then in the Scrum, like we will be having a product backlog, the Scrum framework. The entire questions may come under the Scrum framework. And
Okay.
apart from that, you will be getting on like when you say like, do you work on user stories, writing the user stories? Then they will ask about the user story description, and then how you are going to measure the user story, and then
Okay.
what are story points. So all these things, mostly 80% of the stuff you are going to get from the agile when you say like you worked on agile. Because if they are having a requirement on their for the projects which they are working in the agile methodology, so you will be getting 80% of your questions on the agile itself. So they will
Okay.
not move to the SDLC or the waterfall model that what we have, because the current uh, project or the current methodology that they are using for the projects is agile, so that they will look for the profile who is having good knowledge or who already worked on the agile methodology process.
Okay.
And after completing this one, then let's discuss on these types of requirements. So requirements, this is generic. I mean, general information or the definition of a requirement, which we can say it like it is a singular documented need of what a particular product or service should be or going to perform. It is going statement that identifies a necessary attribute, capability, characteristic, or quality of a system for it to have the value and utility to a user. When you say like when you are working on a particular requirement, so you need to see all these values, like it should have the necessary information or the attributes, or it should have the necessary capability to implement the functionality. And do we have does the requirements is going to make any sense, or if we are going to implement this particular requirement, do we have any added value to the business? So that is how we are going to define the requirement. So in the classical engineering approach, the set of requirements are used as a inputs in the design stages of the product development. That is what we discussed earlier in the SDLC process as well. So the requirements will be collected from the requirements that what we have collected from the business will be acting as an inputs for the design stages. Design stages is nothing but when we say like design, we will be working on the drafting the requirements documentation and then getting the approval of the documents that what we have prepared for the requirements part.
Okay.
And then this is also some of the theoretical part where you can look at. Uh, so this is process of like a software requirement specification. When I say like it is an SRS document, so what happens in
Mm.
the SRS document, like when you are going to prepare the SRS document, so you need to do the particular phases, like you need to have the elicitation, which is nothing but collecting the different requirements from the users, and then you need to understand and modeling the design behavior, which is nothing but in the analysis phase. And then in the specification phase, whatever we have done in the under analysis phase, we are going to document those requirements, understanding like how the requirement is going to function. And then the final is the validation, where we are going to checking that our requirement matches the user requirements or not. So that is nothing but validation is nothing
Okay.
but when we,
Sorry for disturbing. Uh,
sorry.
like I'm still seeing the RUP life cycle phases
Oh,
screen.
give me a minute, I think. Can you able to see now?
Just
Are you still getting still able to see only the rough process slides?
uh, no. Now I can see what is the requirement. Yeah.
Yeah. So
And can we go a little bit slow?
sorry, I missed something.
Oh, can we go a little bit slow?
Yeah, sure. So this is just a theoretical concept. So that's the reason I'm moving ahead so that if you look at the slides itself, you can understand the theoretical part.
Okay.
So we are discussing on this particular slide, like what is the process of capturing the requirements to prepare the SRS document, which is the software requirement specification document. So here we have categorized into four different phases. The first one is the elicitation phase, and the second one is the analysis phase, and the third one is the specification. Fourth one is the validation phase. So what happens in the elicitation phase, which is nothing but requirements elicitation process. So where we are going to collect the requirements from the user or from the client. And then once we collect the requirements, then what we need to do, we need to understand what is the particular requirement or what is the client business. So we are going to perform the analysis. We are going to understand the requirement that has been provided by the client. And then once we have done the analysis, means like we got the complete understanding of the business or complete understanding of the scope of the project. Then we will be working on documenting the requirements, which are nothing but documentation part, which we have discussed. Like we are going to prepare a few set of requirements documents like BRD, which is the business requirement document, and
Okay.
then FRS, which is the functional requirement specification document, and then we have the SRS, which is the software requirement specification document. So
Okay.
this is the process of preparing the software requirement specification document.
Okay.
So is it clear till now?
Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah. So now we will see, like when we say, like when we are working on the requirements or when we are doing the analysis or understanding the performing the business analysis, then whatever the requirements that we have captured, we need to identify like what are the different types of requirements that what we have collected from the business. So usually, mostly we will be having the business requirements and then followed by user requirements and then system requirements, functional requirements, and non-functional requirements. So, business requirements is nothing but explaining about what is the business or what is the client product or what is the client business they are doing. So, we will understand the client business here.
Okay.
And when you say like user requirements, so and when I say like an user, so in the client business, they will be having different users. Say, for example, if you have the like US healthcare, I mean, not health, when we have the client process, so there we will be having the requirements specific to a provider and specific to a member. So member is nothing but our patient or provider is nothing but the different insurance companies. So here
Okay.
the requirements we are going to categorize, say like these are the certain type of requirements which are related to the provider or which we can say it like as the insurance related requirements. And then these are the set of requirements which are related to the members. Members are nothing but patients. Or we can
Okay.
also say like these are another set of requirements which are going to fall under the provider. Provider is nothing but pharmacies here.
Okay.
So like that, we will categorize based on the requirements that what we have collected. But the first step here is without having the business requirements, we can't able to do the user system functional and non-functional requirements. Once we have the business requirements, then we can able to categorize what are the different user requirements we will be having. And among them, what are the functional requirements we will be having, and among them, what are the non-functional requirements.
Okay.
So now we can see, so what are business requirements? So this we discussed like these are the high level requirements that a management or a set of board of directors would typically understand and gives a single line statement or which she will be coming as the scope or the purpose of the project. For example, see here in the requirement one, if you see, I'm calling this is one of the business requirements. So what we will do is like we need to establish an online customer portal. So it is a single line statement, which is very high level, which is defined whatever the requirements which we have collected from the BRD at the business requirement document. It is of like an high level, so we don't have any information. So it just describes the client need or the client purpose here that they need an online customer portal. This is one of the business requirement. So this is one of the example for the business requirement. So is it clear now?
Yeah.
Okay. And then once we have the business requirements, so we say like we have the online customer portal. Like if you remember when I have gave the set of example projects that you have choose one project, which is the um, I think
Hospital.
online patient booking, right?
Yeah, hospital booking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
hospital. So you have that is the business requirement. So on giving the business requirement, what you did, like you prepared, you come up with a set of requirements. Usually, this particular like the hospital booking system is going to have. So you just Googled or you get some do some analysis and understand like what is the hospital booking system process is going to have. So based on that, you come with different concepts or you come up with a different set of questions or you prepared with the different information that what you have. So those we are going to call it as the functional requirements.
Okay.
See, now we have the user requirements. So user requirements are nothing but it is giving the services that the system provides and its operational constraints. So I think you will get a clear understanding when we move to the next slides where we define like what are the different user requirements we will be having. And similarly, the system requirements, which is also a structured document giving out some the detailed descriptions of the system functions, services, and its operational constraints. So it defines like what should be implemented and what may be a part of a contract between the client and contractors. So if I give an example here, like in the sample project that what we have discussed, like hospital management system. So you come up with a different reset of requirements, say like login, patient should sign up for the to access the portal, and then he need to book an appointment through online, and then he need to submit his details, and then he need to select the uh, insurance or the different or the hospital or the doctor nearby him, and then I think only we discussed at that level. So apart from that, so the system that what you are going to deliver to the client is starting with the login screen and then ending up with the identifying the doctors or the hospitals that suits to you or that are required or eligible for your the disease or for the requirement that what you have or for the uh, disease that what you are suffering.
Okay.
So apart from that, so we don't have any thing discussing on the billing say, part like so once we have identified the nearby doctor or nearby hospital, then we are going to have an appointment. So once the appointment is done, so do we need to pay the initial screening phase or do we need to pay any advance booking for the to reserve our time slot, or do we need to uh, give or put assign any of the money to do some basic testings, basic level of tests. So all these are the things like those we been discussed in our project. So those are that all these things like the building system, all this will come under as a out of the scope. So our system defines only with the login screen to the book and then ends up with the booking of an doctor.
Okay.
So now if you see the user requirements or system requirements, so user requirements will be mostly handled by the client managers and the system end users, client engineers, contract managers, and system architects. So client managers in the are nothing but so from the business level, like they will be having different roles, or they will be having managers like at each section, like they will be having a sales manager when they have the sales team, and they will be having a finance manager when they are discussing about all the finance or accounts related things, and they will be having a stock supervisor or inventory manager, so who will be the person responsible for identifying the stocks and the availability of the stocks that are available. And then the system end users, so who are going to use our application or the project that we are going to develop or the software which we are going to design. So who will be the end users? And then we have the client engineers. So client engineers are nothing but in between the manager to the end user level. So there is a middle level of approach, or the persons will be there, which are nothing but the client engineers here.
Okay.
And then we have the contractor managers. So few of the companies, few of the business will not be having any, some of the positions they will be maintaining at the contractor level. So those, the persons who are working at the contract based level, or the managers who are working in the contract based level, we'll be calling it as a contractor managers.
Okay.
And then we'll having the system architects, which nothing but the architecture department team.
Okay.
So this is about like the people or the different types of requirement when you say like the user requirements. So all these requirements will be come under this category. And when you say about the system requirements, so here you are going to have the system end users respective requirements and client engineers requirements and the system architecture requirements and then the software developer requirements. So if you see the difference between the user requirements and system requirements is the only one thing which is additional comes under the software developers. Apart
Yeah.
from that, the system end users we have in the user requirements. So the client engineers, that is also we have the user requirement section, and the system architects is also one of the user requirement section we are having. So the only difference that is the system requirements is like the software developers, like the development team who are going to work on the requirements part. So those will be coming under the system requirements.
Okay.
And these are about the, now we discussed in the business requirements, we discussed about in the types of requirements, we discussed about the business requirement, user requirements, and system requirements. Now we have the functional requirements, which plays a major or which plays a critical role at the heart of the application, which is going to describe the functionality of the requirement. So, whatever the requirements that you are going to describe in this particular phase here are nothing but you are going to explain the functionality of the statement or whatever the line of statement that you have mentioned in the document, that gives the complete understanding of how it is going to function. Like in that particular sentence or in the particular statement that you have defined, it should have the meaningful explanation of how the system is going to function. So
Okay.
these are the statement of services that will provide how the system should react to a particular inputs and how the system should behave in a particular situation. So when I say like this, we can have a small example like ATM transaction. So usually we will be doing the ATM transaction. So what is the use case in this particular